Alright, so for this video, I decided to wear the wizard costume because I think it looks sick. I think it looks like it makes me look like Doctor Doom or some shit. But for this video, I just wanted to talk about how the like a really interesting gauge for truth in this sort of realm. And one of the things that I've noticed is that the more truth something has in this reality, right, the more it is attacked, or the more basically like the more truth something has, the more violent the response is from from basically like the normies, and like the agent Smith sort of comes out of people, but also like you also get a violent reaction from the establishment. And this is a really interesting gauge for sort of finding stuff that the system doesn't want you to know. Because if you say anything, or if you have any opinions that make the agent Smith pop out of people, that's a sign to go further, in my opinion. Right? It's in one of the other things about this reality is that the more ridiculous the truth, or the more truth something has, the more ridiculous they make it seem. Right? Think about like the satanic ritual abuse stuff. Think about like the lizard people stuff. Think about the space is fake stuff. Think about like the ancient advanced civilizations, right? Your free energy, anti gravity, right? The idea that like if you question the mainstream religions, if you're someone who's like anti-vax, for example, right? If you question like the two-party system, if you question the uniparty voting system, right? If you mention anything that is super like outside the Overton window, it activates the agent Smiths inside of people. And I think that this is a really good gauge for truth. It's a really good gauge for stuff that the system doesn't want you to know, because if you get a violent reaction for the things that you say, if you get a violent reaction from the normies, if you get a violent reaction from the establishment, whenever you ask a question, you're not even stating anything outright. If you just ask a question about something, right, and if you ask something that is against the establishment, or if you fit into a category even that's not in like the list of accepted categories, it's not in the Overton window, right? The more outside of the Overton window you are, the more susceptible you are to criticism and attacks by the system, right? And this is why like I don't really like I guess I'm pretty similar to a lot of other sort of truthers or conspiracy theorists in this way. Like I don't talk to people a lot about this kind of stuff because it's not really like arguing with people who believe in the establishment's narrative. It's really a waste of time, and you're never going to convince people to open their eyes. It's at the end of the day, it's their choice, right? But yet again, I just wanted to make a really quick video, just sort of telling, or just talking about this sort of interesting correlation that I've seen, right? There's a certain category of stuff. If you talk about like the lizard people, if you talk about adrenochrome, if you talk about satanic ritual abuse, if you talk about like why would I inject heavy metals into myself, like the vaccine, if you talk about like the 5G stuff, right? There's a certain list of like topics that it's like you're not allowed to talk about on like the mainstream podcasts. Like Joe Rogan never mentions satanic ritual abuse. He never mentions like Draco reptilians. He never mentions the soul trap stuff. And if he does, even if he does, like, he does it in a very like tiny way. There's a certain list of sort of fake conspiracy topics, I think, that are sort of protected by the system. And I think that in this category, it's more like the ancient aliens, Bigfoot, like the cryptids, like, even like the flat Earth stuff. I mean, it's there's like mainstream conspiracy theories, and I think like with the flat Earth stuff, I mean, I think there's a 50-50 chance that that's like a psyop, right? To make other like, if you put the flat Earth stuff side by side by other conspiracies, you can see how that would make other like real conspiracies like MK Ultra, and putting fluoride in the water and stuff like that, how it would make other conspiracies look dumb by comparison, right? Um, or it just makes them look dumb if you put them in the same category. But so there is like a list of like acceptable conspiracy stuff. Like Joe Rogan will talk about like political conspiracies, and they'll talk about like the flat Earth stuff. They'll talk about ancient aliens. Like, dude, did aliens build the pyramids? Holy shit, dude! Right? They'll talk about that stuff. But there's a certain list of forbidden topics that it's so outside the Overton window that it's not allowed to talk about. Like people don't even entertain certain concepts because it's something that really threatens the system. And so just be on the lookout for any topic or any question or any ideology or any model of reality that gets a violent reaction, that gets a bad rap, that gets that if you say anything that activates the Agent Smiths in people, if the if the Matrix programming sort of pops out, if the normies go anytime you mention anytime you question something, anytime you mention something, right? If you question, like for example, like the school system is mind control, and I think that the public education system is a form of it's a form of child abuse, really. I mean, if you're someone who's like, I don't think old people watch my shit, but if you're an old person, I think you should homeschool your kids because public education is a fucking nightmare. Name one good teacher that you've had, right? I mean, you can probably you might be able to count them on one hand, right? But yeah, I mean, if you question that, if you question doctors, right? If you question, mainstream academics, right? That there's a violent reaction to all these things, and I think that that is a sign to push further. That is an indicator of the system having something to hide in relation to that stuff. Like and yet again, the more truth that something has, the more ridiculous they make it sound in order to discredit people, right? Because if victims of satanic ritual abuse, for example, right, they'll come out and they'll say like there's a a conspiracy of Satanists in the in the government, right? They're harvesting children's blood, they're trafficking children in the underground tunnels and all this other shit, right? They'll say that and they sound absolutely ridiculous to the normies, right? And that's by design, that's on purpose, right? So like I said, be on the lookout for anything it's so far outside the Overton window, it's so far outside the list of acceptable ideas. It's so outside, like it's like the normies, the NPCs, the Agent Smiths. They have a list of acceptable stuff, and if it doesn't fit into that, then at best you're a weirdo and you're an outcast. At worst, they violently come after you for saying the stuff that you say. So that is a really good indicator for truth. That's something that I have noticed, that the more emotionally people defend certain things, like with the anti-vax stuff, is sort of the prime example of this. You look at how emotionally people defend, like, oh, you have to take the jab, right? If you're anti-vax, people come out of the woodwork to rip you apart, right? Same thing with like the 5G stuff. Like people come out of the woodwork to rip you apart on that kind of stuff, right? So anytime you say something that makes people come out of the woodwork to rip you apart, anytime you say something that activates the Agent Smiths, anytime you sort of it's almost like an MK Ultra activation phrase. Like it just activates their programming and they just go rah! They go into attack mode to go after you. Anytime you get too close to the truth, so that is a really good indicator to watch out for. But yeah, that's the video.